him down. He was just coming in.
Okay, just
Go
so,
ahead.
once again, welcome everybody. I do want to point out that the meeting is being recorded and it's also being live streamed on YouTube, just so that you're aware that your actions can be seen and heard. I'd like to thank you all for joining us this evening and taking the time out to spend a little time with the General Grand Council. Alan, have you settled in yet? Are you?
Yes. Sorry. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure being here. I've been having some problems with my connection and with the access, but it seems everything being perfect now.
Okay. Well, before we get started, I'll tell you what, Steve Rubenstein, would you mind leading us off with a prayer for starting the meeting?
Grand Architect of the Universe, we thank you for giving us the opportunity to get together in this modern age. And unfortunately, we have to do it this way because of the pandemic we are currently experiencing around the world. We ask you to look upon all of our brothers and their families as we enter this darker winter and look forward to a brighter spring with the vaccines becoming available and all of us able to meet once again on the level as we know as brothers we all should. We ask this all in your name. Amen.
So tonight we've got the pleasure of having illustrious Alan Silvestri from Brazil. He's a past illustrious master, and he's also a school teacher, and he's going to start us off tonight with a short talk about the color purple. Alan, it's all yours.
Thank you, sir. Well, one more time, I would like to say sorry about my delay, this 5-10 minutes, but I'm very, very happy that things walked through that and things were solved. Steve, I believe that I can already share my screen. Yep. Oh,
You're fixed.
Great. Thank you, Steve.
And while you're doing that, Alan is also my ambassador to Brazil.
Just waiting to. Okay, I believe now you can see the screen is okay.
Yes.
Well, companions, it's really a pleasure for me to have these minutes to share with you some ideas, in fact, related to the purple color. As some of you probably had read on the site of the General Grand Council, we are always surrounded by the purple color. In fact, when we discuss anything related to the cryptid masonry, it seems that purple comes to our eyes. And the idea tonight, of course, is not to answer all the questions, as we have just a short time for that, but the idea is to share some ideas that I've been searching, looking, and researching in the last years. And of course, try to make you, not in fact make, but try to open some new horizons and new ideas and bring new perspectives. And I hope that when it comes to the end, everyone have more questions than answers. That for sure is going to motivate us to look for other informations and starting doing links related to that. Well, I will start with this first image. Oh, okay. I use the word first discovery, and this word discovery, I will use that at the end, and then we are going to discuss the difference of the use of this word now and then. Well, maybe some of you have already heard about this guy, Polluces. He have written this book, Onomasticon. We could say that is almost the same as a thesaurus, and he was a Greek sophist. And in this book, he describes some histories. And one of the histories that I'd like to mention tonight is the one that is being pictured by Peter Paul Rubens almost 3 or 4 centuries ago. That is a history about Hercules. Hercules is the Roman definition for the Heracles in the Greek tradition. And this picture is named Hercules Dog Discovery Purple Dye. Probably you're now thinking about what does that have to do with what we are going to talk today. Well, in the book of Polluces, Hercules was walking around on a beach, going to a city to visit and talk to a nymph. And while that was happening, his dog found a seashell, bite it, squeeze it, and like a purple color appear on his mouth, probably some substance that came from the seashell. Of course, in this picture, we have two great and important mistakes. The first one, that if you see the dog's mouth, the color is not exactly purple, but it's scarlet, it's red. And the seashell, well, it is not exactly seashell that we have where is extracted the purple color. But it's one of the first mentions in literature about the use of a purple dye in Occidental literature. Then this is the point that we are going to start. But we do have other references. And probably the first use of this purple dye in history of humanity probably happened in the Bronze Era. 300 years later, you have the use by the Phoenicians in Tyre, in Sidon. And from that time on, the use of this purple color became very, I would say, not just important, but it becomes to be more popular in literature or in references that we can find in archaeological fields. Well, the first the seashell that in fact was used to extract the purple color, it is named Murex brandaris. And a lot of you probably have heard about the use of this purple color in other traditions. We can find in the epic literature in Iliad from Homer and Aeneid from Virgil, where the purple color is mentioned along the history. Probably some of you also have already learned or read about the use in Roman Empire, and the use of this color was just for a few, the emperor and those close to him. But why? Why this purple color that was used at almost 2000 years before Christ, and during that era, why that becomes very popular, but just a few could use this color? Well, it's interesting because when I said to you about that book, that first book, some people would say that the situation that happened with a guy walking on the beach was not Heracles, but it was another character. And this other character was called Melkart. If we take this name and try to find the origin or the meaning of this name, Melkart, we could divide in 2 points. Melk have its origins from Meler, Malak, that means king. And Kart, it comes from another Hebrew word, Kiryat, that means city. So Melkart, we would say something like king of the city. So mentions about the use of purple color and these traditions were always connected to king, with people which has power, money, authority, control of a place or a city or a region. But why? At the left side of this screen, you can see a tablet, but if we take the chronology, it's something like 6 to 500 before Christ. And the name of the city is Sipar or Shipar. This city is there on, it was a Sumerian city, but later becomes a Babylonic city. And that is a place of very great interesting for us, because when Jews were taken to captivity, some of them stayed there for the 70 years. So from this point now we could say the purple color was used among a lot of people on history. It was mentioned on Roman literature, Occidental literature, but we have these tablets that can mention this use in Oriental and Hebrew tradition. So why probably that was used just among a few? I'm not sure if you know about it, but to produce this dye, it was need of a huge amount of seashells to produce this purple dye. Okay, sorry. Okay. To produce this dye, it was very, very complicated. The first register on literature about a recipe of how to produce this purple dye, it was written by Pliny. It was a process that demands more than a week. You would say that it was necessary to take a huge amount of these seashells. Then all these seashells, they need to be mixed in salt water and during this process that must be boiled for more than a week. So could you imagine some high pots, great pots? Okay, maybe someone is with the microphone on. Okay. Could you imagine some high pots full with seashells, then water, salt, and that's boiling and that's smelling, it was really, really a stench, and for more than a week. And after that, there was a need to put out the water and try to filtrate these seashells and then obtain a mass of this purple color, this purple dye. It was very complicated. Demand a huge quantity of seashells. It was really disgusting to produce it. So we would say that the use of that and the value to sell this product, it was very well. We would say that probably the value in the market was very high. It was not a purple color that could be used to common people. You need to have a quantity of the dye, you need to have money to buy for that, and you need to have someone to take that for you. Why I say someone to bring that for you? If you see on this map, I'm going to circulate the places where you can find these seashells and where this purple dye could be produced. So imagine if you're here on the city of Troy, you need to have money to buy, you need to have money to ask people to bring that to you, and maybe if you're going to dye like a 10 or like 10 ropes, maybe you need a huge amount, and the value for that is very, very expensive. We would say that at the same time, when we discuss about purple, down below we have these two seashells, and you can see that it's not exactly just one color, but when we have a purple that more close to ready and the purple more close to blue, depending on this, you could achieve different colors. They are all purple, but some are more reddish and some are more bluish. So we would say that just a few has the opportunity to buy for it, to use clothes like it. So this is the reason why the Roman emperors were using that color. This is the reason why in Christianity, just some high rank guys on the church connected to the Pope or would use clothes with that color. And well, but we could discuss more on that, but we need to follow up. And I bring here, just for curiosity, one of a lot of citations that we can find on Bible. This probably is the most famous on Exodus, when we can find on item 6, on the versicle 6, about blue, purple, and scarlet. Well, if we start reading Exodus and the Old Testament, we would find a lot of references when we can notice the purple color. In this exactly one, it's one of the great interesting for us Masons, because when we mix these three colors, we can see that these three colors, blue, scarlet, and purple, we can find on some very interesting places, like the tabernacle. We can also, as Masons, think on the blue lodges, the red royal arch chapter, and then the purple color used in the cryptid degrees. To the Hebrew people, the use of blue as a symbol, and in Christianity, the meaning of blue color was always linked with the sky, always linked with God, with man, with perfection, with transformation. When we find on literature references in Hebrew tradition and Christian traditions related to the color red, we have things related to kings, maybe sometimes related to some more spiritual meaning. We can find something related to power, with energy, with blood, with fight, but with royal. And if we mix red and blue, if we mix something that is royal with the perfection of a man, if we mix the idea of the chapter and searching for what we find on the royal arch degree with what we have on the craft degrees, maybe that could bring some light for what we have or what we can do on the cryptid degrees. Of course, we are not going to discuss the whole idea of that, but as I said in the beginning, I'm just here to bring some new ideas and possibilities about what can we compare, or what can we do with the purple color, thinking on meanings, traditions, Masonic, and so on. It is also interesting because I have seen a lot of articles and Masons trying to connect these colors. And okay, the purple color in Bible, the reference was that probably, but I call your attention because in Bible usually the color refers to blue. It is written that way, techelet. That's not the problem. Techelet on Bible refers to blue, but there are a lot of references related to this red color, shani or sheni, but the red color that we say nowadays in Hebrew is not sheni, but is adom. So I will call your attention that when you're trying to look for colors on Bible, you really need to look not just for the translation in the Bible of, for example, King James Bible, but it's interesting to look on the origin of the terms, because depending on what you're using or what you're looking for, that's not exactly purple. It could be a purple reddish, it could be a purple bluish, or we could have a slightly difference of colors. So I bring here the three exactly words that were used in that passage on Exodus. So it's shani, we have here argamot, and then we have techelet. We can notice more than that we have already seen these colors not just in 1 degree, but probably in more degrees. So I invite you, look back on since where you were an entered apprentice, and try to search for these colors and their meaning on some of the ceremonies that we have already passed. More than that, maybe some of you, in fact, probably a lot of you, could find some degrees on which these three colors are present, and try to think about the order on the ritual, which color come first to that ritual, to that passage, and then why the second one, and then the third one. Try to look for references related to that. Maybe that would bring new perspectives. Here you can see another image of some seashells and a lot of different colors possible that come from these seashells, combining them. So we can see colors from light blue to this color, this purple, blue, and so on. Well, but to end our conversation and to bring these new perspectives, why the purple color, the Tyrian of purple, have been used for a lot of centuries. There's no one that could find another dye to substitute that one that was very, very expensive. No, that's the answer. During all the Middle Ages, the Tyrian purple was used, and there was no other place where we could find this purple dye. For those who has some connections with chemistry, those seashells, they have these two substances. So depending on the quality of the seashell or the species of the seashell, we could find, or we could obtain after that long process, a purple that is more purple, more reddish, depending if we have more of this substance, of this molecule on the constitution of that seashells. But sometimes we can have more indigo on that seashells. So you're going to have a purple that's more blue. And as we have already said, the entire process of manufacturing that was very, very slow. The cost was really expensive. It was really hard and tiresome to obtain that. So it became the color of kings, nobles, and authorities. But very close to us, in 1860, another discovery had happened. And now that happened with Perkin. So we are talking about something that happened just 140 years ago. 160 years ago. Perkin, he was working to produce a substance that could cure malaria. He was trying to produce it using some reactions, and accidentally he discovered the substance malvein. In science, we would not use discovery, or we do not use accidental, because there are some differences when you discover something by chance. You're walking around like Heracles. He was walking on the beach, and for an instance, the dog bited the shell, look at the mouth of the dog and say, oh, look at that. That color is interesting. But how many people walking on that beach may have some dog by his side? The dog could have already crashed, or the guys or the persons walking on that beach could have already stepped on that seashells and have seen that color. A lot of people would have done that. But when you look for something that happened around you and you have the creativity, or you notice the possibility for something else, we can use the term in science as serendipity. So it's a discovery, but not just a discovery by chance, but a discovery when you look for that and you see a new horizon and a new possibility, and your creativity can make use of that discovery for any other purpose. For example, Perkin, when that happened with him, he was trying to obtain that substance, but the reaction at the end produced something like black and very viscous. And he looked for that and said, no, this is not the reaction I want to use. And then he threw that on a sink. And when he used the water to wash that, this black substance is starting to dissolve. And he noticed a violet color. And after that, his hands were with this violet color, and he used it something made from linen to take that color from his hands, and he noticed that this color almost like got close to the linen, and even trying to wash, the linen was dyed. And he thought, okay, that reaction was to produce a substance against malaria. When I tried to wash that out, I noticed that a violet color was produced, and that can be used to dye a lot of things. Well, why not create, why not to produce this new color? Why not produce this new dye in this way that was very, very simple and we would say very, very cheap? Well, Perkin was the guy who created and he started an industry in dye. He started with that. He quit his job at that lab. He decided not to work more with that substance and malaria. And from that day on, he created an industry and started working with that. And we would say that it was very profitable. So sometimes some discoveries happen in our lives, and the most important thing is for us to be close attention on the details. So to finish our talk, I bring some more images, some of his notes, of Perkin notes, and some of of the information related to that. And I would like to leave you with 3 messages. First, one more time, sorry for being delayed. That make me a little bit stressed here, but trying to be here with you tonight and trying to connect, and the connection was not great. So sorry for my delay one more time. Second, I hope that the first idea that I mentioned with the talk was not to answer things, but to bring new questions for you, to share these new questions. I believe there are a lot of possibilities in here. Every one of you could find an aspect that may think that is really interesting, to look for more information, to search for new connections, to relate that with cryptic masonry, maybe also related with other degrees, and try to improve the understanding of their meaning along our walking during this Masonic life. And my final and third message is try to be always open-minded, because sometimes when we are specialists, we look all the situation with just one eye. And when that happens, we lose all the beauty around. And sometimes we cannot notice a lot of things that being shown to us because we are looking just with one eye, with one scope. So try to open your mind, try to look around, and sometimes looking around can make you understand more when you look close. And that is something that I believe and I hope that every one of you can do when you look for the purple color again in your life, in your council, or in cryptic masonry. So thank you so much. And I hope I could have bring new perspectives. Thank you again.
Thank you, Alan. That was very interesting. We have a saying here related to your last point that you can't see the forest through the trees. So it's a very similar saying. Does anybody have any questions for Alan on his presentation? Okay.
When that happened, it makes me afraid because sometimes was a lot of information and interesting information people are trying to process, or maybe I have been not clear in anything and people are trying to, what this guy had said?
No, you were very clear, Alan. It was a very good presentation. Okay. Well, so with that, we will open the floor up to general conversation. Again, the primary purpose of this fireside chat, along with education, is to provide the companions a opportunity to directly interact with the General Grand Council and me in particular, and ask any questions that you might have, and we will do our best to answer them. This will always be an open, free form conversation. I don't have anything specific to put out, so the time that it takes is all dependent upon you guys and the questions that you ask. So don't be shy.
If I may, General Grandmaster, I will share here on the chat, I will share this presentation in PDF with these images, so anyone can use that or spread it out to anyone, to your councils. And I will also share my telephone number, so you can use WhatsApp if some questions appear later on, and or if you need some of the references that I used, or if you ask any new information, I will be very welcome and happy to provide them to you.
Actually, Alan, General Grand Master, if I may, would you do that as well as send Will Highsmith the PowerPoint, or me? That's fine. And
Okay.
then do a quick write up of letting people know that they're more than welcome to use it if that's okay with you. If you wanted to, you could do a PDF or whatnot. So whatever works. But if you send it to Will, then we'll put it up as a decryption article after the fact.
It will be
And we
sent.
can also- Go ahead.
It will be sent to you and Bill, and anything you need, let me know.
Okay. And we'll also take out your presentation and put it up there. So General Grandmaster, I'm going to stop and restart recording.
Okay.
Done.
Make it a little easier to edit, huh?
I'm just saying.
Yeah. Okay. So what have you got for me tonight, guys?
General Grandmaster, this is Robert Whitfield from California.
Hey, Robert, how are you, sir?
I'm doing pretty well, sir. I thought I'd bring up a different subject for us to ponder since the audience comes from everywhere. I came back from Florida last week and I had my parents' funeral service that I presented. So that was a sad note, but at the end of the funeral service, I went back to the family home and I was packing up things to come back to California. And my dad was a Mason, an accomplished Mason. And so I was packing up his things. And like most of us that are on this call, every Mason that is probably on this conference right now has a lot of things that we have in our closet, achievements that we have, aprons that we have, pins that we have, belts, buckles, things like that. And this occurs over and over and over again at our passing, where we have these things that are so important to us. Have we ever had any kind of discussion as to how we can repurpose a lot of these things so that they have a second life, a second use, so that as widows come up to us, as companions pass away, as we come into acquire things such as really nice aprons, Templar swords, buckles, those sort of things. Maybe not the pins, the memorabilia pins, but things that certainly are in brand new condition because we've kept them well, that we can pass them along to somebody if there isn't a son to pass it along to.
No, that's a great idea. I know that several Masonic organizations have policies, for lack of a better term, where say your past master's jewel or your grandmaster's jewel or whatever is yours until your passing, and then it should be returned back to the issuing body so that it can be then reused for someone else down the line. And so now those jewels will have a history behind them. I think in today's modern age, we're so used to getting the newer jewels and they're nice and shiny and all that, but there's no history behind them. And I really like the idea of that. I know that most Puss and David, the past General Grand Master's jewel that he is wearing was from, who is that from, Steve?
That was George Sellers.
Yeah, George Sellers' jewel and his apron, I believe. So this is something that I think is very important. I myself have seen a lot of Masonic regalia that has been turned over to lodges and they don't know what to do with it. It ends up being thrown in a closet or whatever, and then dry rot sets in. How many fezzes, you know, can you display? How many 33rd degree hats can you display? That sort of stuff. But to me, the important things are the jewels and the rings and those sorts of things. And I hate to always see them show up on in pawn shops or on eBay, that sort of stuff, because that means it didn't mean anything to the people that ultimately received it. So yeah, I think it's important that all the brothers think about what is going to happen with their stuff and make sure that they leave arrangements for its distribution. My son doesn't have any particular desire to be a Mason, at least not right now. But you know, I have instructions written for, you know, in the eventuality of my passing, what to do with my stuff. There's certain things I do want to go to him in the event that he at some point chooses to become a Mason. Then he'll have those for his self. So yeah, I think that that's a great idea, and I think that, you know, we should all think about how we do that. I also think we ought to talk to some of our Masonic vendors out there too, and see what we can do to be able to repurpose aprons, you know, because typically your apron will have embroidered inside the flap or something your name and dates and all that sort of stuff. And to be able to replace that if needed, or figure out a way to add your name to it, sort of stuff. So
And create our own secondary market.
yes.
You know, if things can be turned in uniformly into the Grand Recorders, Grand Secretaries, Grand Lodges, but not just turned in, but turned in also with a one-page summary of the history of that particular item. And then if we can actively encourage the secretaries, recorders, the grand secretaries of our lodges to make presentations at the appropriate time and say, I'd like to present you with this on your going out of office. And this is the history behind this sword. This is the history behind this apron. It'll have a lot more meaning. And I think the person receiving it will value it a little bit more. I've been inside the vaults of our Grand Lodge of California, and I've seen the collection of things that we have at the Grand York Rite office in California. There's quite a lot of things. And unfortunately, like you said, a lot of it collects dust and it doesn't see the light of day again. But, you know, as I look at my dad's things that I've brought home, they're in brand new condition. And unfortunately, some of these things are things that I will never be able to use. And I'm trying to figure out how to make sure that they get passed on to some worthy Mason without him having to go out and buy a modern Knight Templar sword that may not be as nice as the gold past commander's sword that I have that I could pass along. Right. That's just one example. But I think that we on this call, we can collectively think about doing this in our individual regions, states, countries, etc.
Yes.
General Grand Master, if I may.
Sure.
Bob, what I was introduced to is actually a really cool program in Albuquerque. When I first came on, you know, we were encouraged to go to the secretary recorder and see if there was anything that fit. And they did get repurposed. And the ask was actually a fantastic program where, okay, we're not going to tell you how much to give, but give to, for a purple jacket, for instance, give to CMMRF, make a donation. That's what the cost is. We're not going to charge you for it. Make a donation to CMMRF. And, you know, we don't get as many people who donated into that program, giving the things that were left by someone. But we do have an active, you know, we used to have, and actually Dion's on the call. He's the secretary recorder now. But we could solicit, and maybe I guess, you know, maybe you get tired of hearing this from me, but that would make a great article, Bob.
Grandmaster, I have two little anecdotes to tell you. I just took the past master's jewel that I received about 8 or 10 years ago, and I was the third person to wear that jewel. And I just gave it to our new retiring past master in my lodge here in Massachusetts. It would have to go back to the lodge anyway because they had to sign a paper saying that it belonged to them. But among all the papers that a survivor would have to go through, that may be skipped, and I hate to see that. I felt a lot of pleasure seeing my past master's jewel being actually handed down to someone who would probably wear it for the next 10 to 15 years, and then whatever he's going to do with that daughter, if he gets to a point where he would not be wearing it. So that gave me a lot of pleasure. I've always had the idea of trying to repurpose aprons. That's a little harder to do. I did have a flap replaced on my past master's apron when I became a district deputy, and it was presented to a man who was becoming a past master who I had brought into the lodge. So there was a history there. And I found out when I was presented with a commander's sword in my commandery at the end of last year that the person's name engraved on it was the first name engraved on that past master's jewel as well. And that meant something very special to me. So, you know, do it while you're still alive and get the joy of seeing it passed on is my bottom line message here. And I would think that would make everybody happy. There are times you're not going to wear some of these things again, and it makes sense.
No, that's a great idea. The when I became a Knight Templar, the secretary took me back to the robing room, so to speak, and said, check and see if you can find a uniform jacket and just wear some black pants and a white shirt and you're good to go. What he failed to mention though is that all of the past members were 5'4" Chinese guys. So yeah, I ended up buying my own jacket, but and then as I progressed in Templary, I actually gave that jacket to someone else and bought another one. But yeah, you know, I've always found it funny that we as Masons will hang on to costumes until they fall apart. And you know, some of the costumes that we use in our degrees, you know, are threadbare to say the least. But we don't think about, you know, the regalia that we give to individuals, and it's a significant expense for a lot of organizations to buy these things, particularly if they're still using gold. Yeah, it's definitely something that should be considered.
Another anecdote about this. There's a story I got from a friend of mine up in Buffalo. He went to a yard sale. I mean, tell your family how important these jewels are. You know, I'm going to share with them. I find I don't do that either. But someone found a jewel, a Scottish Rite jewel, 33rd degree Scottish Rite jewel at a yard sale. And someone gave $5 for it. Knew he was a Scottish Rite Mason, so he gave it to him. It turns out it was a 33rd degree jewel. It was given to Jack Kemp, who was an illustrious member, football player, member quarterback with the Buffalo Bills, and then on to Congress. I believe he's a senator. And he found it at a yard sale. So you should tell your family for sure to, you know, some of these things should be returned back to their Scottish Rite or the Templars or wherever you get them from. And like you say, be refurbished and used again. That's how we do ours. Mine's got a history to it as well. But this story really threw me back when I heard about it. So it's important.
General Grandmaster Monty, I thought you would appreciate this. One of the aprons that I inherited was this apron here.
Ah, yeah.
And you would appreciate this because on the inside of the flap, The inside of the flap inside here says Grand Lodge of the Philippines representative to the Grand Lodge of Honolulu, 1989.
Outstanding. Whose apron was that?
This is my father's.
Oh, gorgeous.
Great. I would like to share a little
Well,
bit
well,
on that related to here in Brazil. It's very common here on the lodges. When somebody passes away, the members of the lodge visit the family and talk with the wife or with the mother or the sons about that. And okay, if you really want to retain all his things, you know how it was important to him and you want to have that as a remembrance and everything else, okay. But if you don't know what you do, we, the members of the lodge, we can take care of that. And usually what they do, sometimes book are reused and redistributed or use it as the library of the lodge. Regalia sometimes pass it to other members, or they are in the lodge for the use of those who cannot buy, or as Monty said, okay, you can use that. And sometimes when we discuss about really old members, we have some regalia that's very historical or some book that is very important. And some of the members of the lodge, they pass it to the obediences for museums and things like that. But it's very sad when we see on like this small stores or booksellers, and you have something that is very and really important to someone, but when the guy passes away, the family doesn't know the importance of that, or they don't know how to do, and the members of the lodge do not talk to the families, and we can find things everywhere. So for 5 or 6 years, I've been in search of this Masonic regalia from people who, for any reason, pass away, and try to sell in these garden stores, yard stores, or these booksellers, and try to get them back to the place that they belong. So sometimes a bookseller, okay, I have here a book from the Mason, the family sold to me. It is written that this guy is from the lodge number blah, blah, blah. And then I buy and bring that to the lodge and say, okay, that belongs to your history, to your tradition, to your lodge. But it's very, very interesting what happened. Probably every one of you has some history or situation that's it.
Bill, you had something to say? Bill Lott?
Yes, just a suggestion. In your will, or at least put it someplace where the family knows, to designate a brother who is well knowledgeable about Masonic jewelry, that tell your family all your jewelry is to be turned over to this particular brother, and let this brother will know where it should go back to, which lodge, which chapter, which council. In other words, this way they have a single person that they know is responsible for taking care of your Masonic jewelry.
Yep,
I think
absolutely.
that's part of that important article that our companion Stephen Bulkey was asking for. That's great advice, and it's an outstanding thing to make sure is in every Mason's hands to make provisions for that while he is mentally very capable.
Yep. Great discussion.
If I may,
Absolutely.
as a grand secretary recorder here in Nevada, we have a system likewise of having the past commander's jewels signed for. But what I found in dealing with some of the widows of our deceased past grand commanders, one widow and our original past grand commander jewels are real gold jewels. They are very valuable now because of the increase in the price of gold. They're heavy, they're real gold. And one widow who refused to return the jewel to the Grand Commandery, even though I had a signed document from her husband realizing that it was property of the Grand Commander. She had him interred with the jewel. He was buried in his uniform, and she would not take the jewel off his uniform. It's a very difficult fine line to have to walk between families and deceased and regulations and things. You have to be really diplomatic about it. But I find that the greatest fault is the fact that, unlike what our General Grand Master said, he's made provisions to provide for his regalia. Most Masons don't even give that a thought. And that's wherein the problem lies. And the other thing is, men tend to not communicate with their wives about their Masonic regalia and things like that. For instance, I'm the Secretary Treasurer of the Widows and Orphans Fund here in Southern Nevada. And husbands belong to the fund. They make voluntary contributions, assessments. When a certain number passes away, we send out an assessment. They pass away and I send a check to the widow, and they're totally shocked and amazed that they got this benefit check from Widows and Orphans because their husband never told them that they were the beneficiary of a Masonic Widows and Orphans benefit. Communicate, 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 communicate. It is so important, and it relieves a lot of the tension that arises when those unfortunate incidents happen in our lives. You have to be prepared for these things in advance. So even though we don't want to face what's coming at the end, we know it's coming, prepare for it. Make communication, make plans. Like was suggested, having your family know that there is a brother in your lodge or in your York Rite or Scottish Rite who you would entrust to have all of your Masonic regalia go to, so they know exactly what to do with it. I have frequently walked out my door here at the temple, and there'll be boxes sitting in front of the door of paraphernalia that families didn't have a clue what to do with, so they just took it to the temple and dumped it. A lot of it is not reusable, and I have to destroy it gingerly or tenderly. Some of them is quite old and cannot be reused. Some of them are rare pieces that we have put in our library. I, as a Grand Secretary Recorder, have probably 8 apron cases here in my office of past illustrious Grand Master aprons and stuff that are in such condition that they cannot be used, and I'm at a loss of what to do with them because they just can't be reused, and there's no place for us to display them even because we don't actually have a facility large enough to do that. So it is a complicated thing, and my caution to everybody is plan ahead and communicate. That is so important, and it relieves a lot of the tensions that arise in those circumstances. Just my 2 cents worth.
Well, the only thing that's certain is none of us get out of this alive, so we need to prepare.
By the way, Steve Bulkey, I'm fine. I'm fine.
Excellent. Or rather, I hope it gets better.
So any other topics for discussions, questions for me or any of the General Grant officers? I know.
I do want to put in a plug for the Southwest region and congratulate Chadwick Burks on being elected a General Grand Scribe yesterday at the General Grand Chapter thing. It brings further recognition that the West is growing in strength in our Masonic bodies, and I'm tickled to death to see Chadwick advance. I think he's going to be a really valuable asset to General Grand Chapter. He's produced some excellent videos. He's put a lot of time and effort into trying to shore up General Grand Chapter, just as we have people in General Grand Council doing the same thing. I see a brighter future for us because of the people that are stepping up and breathing some new life into our organization. It's unfortunate that this is coming at a time when we're handicapped by this virus and we're not able to hold live meetings. Our Grand Master has ceased all Masonic activities in the state of Nevada until further notice because of increased. We had a couple of outbreaks as a result of our Grand Lodge here a couple of weeks ago. We've had 2 or 3 members who have passed away just within the last 2 weeks from COVID, who have been active in the last couple of weeks. So I think we're on the right track, and I'm very encouraged as an old man to see young lives being breathed into our organization. There's hope for the future. I'm proud of that.
Yeah, it's kind of an exciting time. You know, I've looked at it very much like we're undergoing somewhat of a generational change in a lot of our grand organizations, where the younger guys that are still, you know, involved in their careers, are taking on leadership roles in many of the grand bodies throughout Masonry. It presents its own challenges because we're still working. We have to kind of juggle the traveling responsibilities and all of the duties that are on our plates, along with our careers and our family. It can be challenging. When I first came on board for the General Grand line, we had General Grand officers meetings, leadership meetings, basically twice a year. And beyond that, we hardly ever had any meetings as the leadership. When Dave took over, we started having, I believe we started out as monthly meetings, and as things progressed and more things came up, we started having weekly Zoom meetings, and we're continuing on. And I think that as far as General Grand Council is concerned, we've never had this level of communication, even among the officers, that we do now. And a lot of that has to do with the technology being available, but it also expresses the dedication that officers have now. You know, I see Bill on meetings all the time, and Steve's everywhere. Same with John and James. They're running 10, 15 meetings a week. So yeah, I think it's been good. I think that this platform has been one of the few good things that have come about from the COVID situation. It also has its issues when you look at restarting up your face-to-face meetings, because people have gotten used to not going to lodge. But I do believe, though, that we've really gotten to the point where we can get information out so much quicker and so much more accurately than we've ever had before. And it took COVID to push us into this mode. And I think,
absolutely. And look at the attendance yesterday at General Grand Chapter.
yeah,
500 and some people online from all over the world. We could never have done that at a live meeting. That's for sure. Another thing is that, and I take a little bit of credit for getting involved in this, although I'm an old timer too far back. But I don't know how many jurisdictions that are represented here have Masters and Wardens Associations, where you get area lodges and the Masters and Wardens get together once a month and talk about lodges and this and that. So I said, why are we limiting this to Masters and Wardens? Why do we call ourselves a Masters and Wardens Association when we've got deacons who are going to be advancing through the line and other appointed officers down the line that we know are going to advance through the chairs? So I got them to change the name of our Masters and Wardens Association to Masonic Officers Association so that we can include lower line officers in the meetings and get them involved at an earlier age, earlier stage in their advancement through the line to be involved in planning lodge activities. And that's already increased attendance and membership because of the fact that we're getting more inclusive. Something that I think we really need to take a look at. We need to be more inclusive.
Yeah, and to kind of give a shout out to Steve, his work with the Grand Recorders, I think has been outstanding. I think the Grand Recorders have had access to more information from General Grand than they've ever had before, and
sometimes too much.
Yes, sometimes it's too much. Our meetings can go a little long, but I always enjoy being on those calls because I get a lot of information from you guys that I wouldn't have already known. And so yeah, it's I've found it very interesting. Zoom calls can get a little tiring at times, but particularly when you get on 4-hour calls and then you got another 2-hour call after that, and you've been on video calls all day at work and that sort of stuff. So yeah, it can be challenging. Plus, just this example here where, we've got people from all over the world that are here to be able to share ideas and, have Masonic speakers from somewhere outside the US. And that's where I saw this platform as something that was really a great opportunity, because so many American Masons don't take the opportunity to utilize one of the greatest benefits of being a Mason, and that's traveling and being able to go and visit and learn about the differences and particularly on perspectives of the different aspects of Masonry, and to learn how they do their work and how they view the symbols of Freemasonry. And that's been one of the most amazing things that I've been able to take advantage of. Are you waving at me, Stephen, or you're on mute, sir?
No, sir, I was just waving goodbye to Dick Fowler, who will see us later. We have a Grand Line Officers meeting at 8 o'clock on the 4th Sunday of the month. Surprise, surprise.
There you go. Well, take care, Dick. So, anything else?
General Grand Master,
Yes, sir.
for those who are unaware, what are your plans for this triennium as far as meetings?
Can you be a little more specific?
You're going to wait 3 years to have a triennial?
Oh, no, the plan right now is that we're actually going to have 3 meetings of the voting membership this triennium. I use triennial and triennium interchangeable. So, but the first one is going to be right now is scheduled for, I believe, August 15th in Minneapolis, in conjunction with the Grand Encampments Triennial meeting. It's the Sunday of their session, and people will register through the Grand Encampments registration process. And the primary purpose of that meeting will be to address the legislation that we didn't present at this most recent triennial. And it will be an in-person meeting unless, God forbid, the COVID stuff has still got everybody locked down. And if that's the case, we will convert it to a online meeting and try to deal with it that way. The second meeting will be a midterm triennial meeting, and it will be on Zoom, and it will be primarily to basically update the members on the financial status of the General Grand Council, where we stand year to date to our budget, what things we have seen and done that have been outside the the unplanned expenses that inevitably come up, and basically answer any questions regarding the financials. And then the third one will be the one that everybody's typically used to, that will be the big event where we hold elections and install the new officers. And that will be in probably early September. We're still trying to nail down a date that doesn't conflict with everybody. And right now, the plans for that will be I'm hoping to have it in Branson, Missouri. One reason is because it's a very family-oriented area. There's lots of things to do there. There's great music, a lot of just incredibly talented people in that area. There's a theme park there. There's all kinds of things to do, beautiful lakes. So it gives something for the whole family to do if you want to bring the family. And it's just a nice area to go to. Lots of entertainment options there. So that's basically the plan. Does anybody have any questions on any of that? And we'll also continue to have we have a monthly regional deputies call that we have with all of the regional deputies. That's a challenging meeting for a lot of people because it spans 18 time zones. But I have to really congratulate my deputies, because they all step up, and some of them are there really late in the day, and some of them are getting up really early. So, but yeah, they will always bring good things to the table. And eventually I want to start having meetings with the grand illustrious masters and their senior leaders to talk about and share ideas among the different jurisdictions, so that we're not, a lot of times we don't really do these types of discussions until we're at a regional meeting. And then, regional give their updates and stuff, and that'll spur some conversation. But why do we need to wait for a regional conference to have these conversations? And why should it be limited to just that region when we have the ability to actually open this up and have really good discussions without geographical barriers or boundaries? So, right now, I've been waiting for things to kind of settle down with the demands that are being placed on me and my team with all the different things that are going on in the world. But hopefully, once things settle down a little bit, we'll be able to get those meetings started.
Thank you very much, General Grandmaster.
Yep. So is there anything that you guys can think of that the General Grand Council isn't doing that you think we should be doing? Well, we nailed it then, Steve.
God damn.
One foot in front of the other, General Grandmaster.
We, a lot of what we're doing today, it's really kind of funny because, what was it, 2017 in August, at the Southwest Regional Conference, myself and Dave and Steve, and I don't remember who all else was there, but we were, Bill was there as well? Yeah. And we were all at a sports bar. I was smoking my cigar. Steve was smoking his cigarettes, and we were having a beer, and we just started brainstorming, and it was organic. It wasn't, a design meeting. And I was there. It's like, hey, you want to talk to me? I'm downstairs smoking my cigar. Come find me. And we sat there and we must have talked for 4 or 5 hours. And just like, oh, that's a great idea. And we should try this and we should try that. And a lot of those things got tried. Some of them fell away because not every idea is a great idea, even though they sound like it. Some ideas, it just wasn't the right time. But they're still kind of on that back burner. But, you know, I think from the very beginning, we gelled really well as a team. And we've been trying to continue that closeness. And I tell you, I'm proud of the people that I'm working with in the General Grand. They're all engaged in different ways. We all bring different skills to the table, and I really think we're pretty unstoppable. I'm tickled, and I hope you all feel the same way. You know, I think that there's nothing that we can't accomplish. You know, I said at one of the meetings that, you know, all it takes is time and money, and time will make. Money's going to depend on the companions. We're on a fixed budget, and we have $2.50, and my mission is to make sure you guys are getting your $2.50 worth. But if you want more, then we have to have the discussion of how do we pay for it. And that's always a tricky conversation to have.
General Grandmaster, just for the record, not that I'm counting or anything, but that was 3 years and 24 days ago.
Yeah. Yep. So what else, guys? Anything you guys got to add?
General Grandmaster, do you think that maybe the next time we have a fireside chat, depending upon what speaker you bring up, maybe we can have a short discussion on a productive discussion where everybody can chime in on different ideas as to how we as a General Grand Council can provide ideas to the Grand Councils how to come out of this pandemic with our councils pretty intact. Companion Alan made a comment on one of the little chat messages here that he says it seems like everybody that we were close to is now distant, and everybody that was distant is now close. I'm sure he was referring to these Zoom meetings, but it really is true that the longer this pandemic goes along, the further away our local councils might drift away. And I think that's, you know, those of us that are engaged will always be here. But we need to make sure that we disseminate ideas as to how the local councils and the grand councils can make sure that we not only keep the membership that we had before the pandemic, but how to make sure that we might be able to bring in new members where most of us are under edicts that we can't meet anymore. And that's an issue when you can't have any camaraderie, you can't meet with each other, you can't have more than 2 Masons in a room at any given time. We need to be able to hold this together so that when this ends, we can go back to a familiar gathering with at least the same numbers we had as when this pandemic started.
Yeah, I think that that's a great idea. I'm happy to do that.
Just an idea.
Yep. I've got an idea of who I want to ask for the next fireside chat for the educational portion. But after that, we can certainly talk about this. And you know, together we're all smarter than any of us individually. So the more ideas we can bring to the table, because you know, and Robert, I know that, you know, in the past we had a conversation with California. It's like I think it was around membership at the time, and the General Grand Council can certainly come up with ideas, but we can't make any particular jurisdiction follow them. So, it's always making sure that people understand what the problems are and where they sit, and then being willing to be open to ideas from outside. But I've seen a lot of great ideas on education programs, on membership programs, and I think that this is very much new territory for us, for all of us, and every Masonic organization is going to be struggling with this moving forward. And it doesn't take you very long to come up with something else to do on Lodge Night and get used to it. And so getting that habit of going back to your Masonic meetings is going to be a struggle. So yeah, I definitely would be more than happy to have that discussion.
I think you're going to see a receptive attitude from California, but in all states, I think that the local councils, the local bodies, look to the grand bodies for leadership and constructive ideas on how to progress and grow. And likewise, the grand councils of our states look towards the general grand councils for leadership and suggestions on possible ways to be able to grow and remain vibrant. And I see that as our responsibility. So, everybody that is on this video conference today is a very intelligent person, and we all do bring different skills to the table. And it's a perfect place for us to be able to come up with ideas collectively, disseminate those ideas, and some of them won't work, and some of them might be extremely useful to implement now while we're under these pandemic restrictions.
I would say that as a teacher, I'm facing with my students that they are in need of being back to classes with the students, with the teachers. And there is something that I can notice that bring them back and make them feel comfortable is when they notice and when they are really sure that you as a teacher are by their side. When they feel that they can contact you, that you are there for them, it seems that they feel safe, that they feel motivated, that they feel that can go through. So maybe thinking on that, the new companions on our councils, they would be a little bit, okay, I want some new meeting, I want to go to the lodge, I want to be with my companions, but probably when they feel that they are close to the members of the council, when the council feels that they are close to the Grand Council, and when the Grand Council feels that they are close to the General Grand Council, I think that this is a great step. And meetings like this that we are having here is a great opportunity for us, as the General Grand Master said, to be together, to feel that we have one another to count on, to share ideas, to create new possibilities, to talk with that. So maybe that would be a possibility for us to start looking. Let us look to the companions of our council. What can we do for them, and what can we make for them to feel safe, close, and motivated to keep working, to keep on the cryptic degrees and masonry? That would be something of really worth.
General Grand Master, we had a question in chat from Dale down in Florida about whether CMMRF Zoom board meetings are open to state chairmen.
Yep, I'll let you talk about that while I take a brief station identification moment.
All right, I'll swing in there on that. First, all CMMRF board meetings, unless they're an executive session to discuss a personnel or investment matter, they are open. It's just usually they're held in a suite in the hotel when we're having a meeting, whether it's the one that we would usually have at our triennial session with the newly elected board, or the ones that we have usually traditionally have had twice a year in person, we're usually in a room that's not big enough to hold all the state chairmen that could show up. But we're going to be looking at doing some hybrid meetings, as well as educational sessions like we did with Dr. Murphy in New Mexico in February of, Steve, when was that? Was that February of 19 or was that 20?
That was January of 20, I believe.
January of 20. So we got that in before the pandemic, and we planned. Bob, good to see you. How you doing? But we are planning to continue to expand on the ideas that we had in place before the pandemic. And then we've already appointed a chairman over the committee for state chairman, which is Tom Taylor, the vice president of the CMMRF board, because we have neglected all these state chairmen that we have in place or that we are going to have in place. And this includes chairman for the states and the regions around the world as we start bringing CMMRF knowledge of it and benefit to our member nations and our various grand councils around the world. So, we've got quite a full plate that we're setting up. But one thing we do want is to start having regional meetings by Zoom of our state chairman. There was one done for Southeast region that Paul Friend was able to give some inspiration to. But we plan to do this throughout the United States, but then around the world, one form or another. And then whenever we can, we're going to be doing these educational seminars with Dr. Murphy and other professional staff, researchers, so that people can get an idea of what we're doing with the money. And more importantly, the thing that we did in New Mexico involved collaborators from around the world. And we want to involve, like, inviting medical people. Say Dr. Murphy had the idea, because of connections that he has in the St. Louis, Missouri area, we were going to have a seminar there. That couldn't happen because of the pandemic, but that's still on our agenda of ideas, is to do something like that where it's at a medical facility and we invite local medical people to increase their knowledge of what CMMRF is doing and just how incredibly important that research is and how it ties in with so many other things. Like, who would have known that out of all the Masonic charities, the one Masonic charity that has a connection to coronavirus treatment, therapeutic treatment, pre-vaccine, happens to be work that was being done by CMMRF. And so, we're already relevant in that field. And if we have other pandemics that come about over the next few years, obviously stem cell research is going to play a role in that. So anyway, Bonnie, I've covered that, I think. And if anybody has questions, you can send those to me at zorel1953@gmail.com.
Thank you, Bill. Yeah, CMMRF's another area where I think we've made great strides in utilizing technology to better the organization. Again, in the past, when I first came on board, CMMRF met as a board twice a year. And that was in person, and that was the only time we dealt with board business. Now we're meeting monthly and or close to monthly, and we're actually addressing so much more that we didn't have an opportunity to do before. And it's been very good. There's a lot of great programs that Bill and Tom are developing. And so, yeah, it's an exciting time for CMMRF, I think. What else, guys? Thank you, Companion Douglas. And Bill's email's in the chat window now too, in case you don't have it. Tomorrow night there's a meeting, an educational meeting with the Italian companions. If anybody's interested, Steve, do you have the link that you could post for that?
Yeah, this is something you want to bring your Italian relatives who can speak Italian so that you have a ready translator at hand.
Yeah, it will be in Italian.
But it's on the history of the cryptic rite.
In
It'll be
Italy.
interesting to see what they come up with. Monty, if I could, I just wanted to cover, we're going to be addressing some constitution and bylaw issues. Most of these are things that are aimed at trying to improve what we are able to do and the technicalities of how we are able to do things. For example, there's a lot of good things that are in standing resolutions of the General Grand Chapter that we don't have the same capabilities addressed in the bylaws of the General Grand Council. For example, we're incorporated in the state of Idaho. How many members knew that? We're incorporated as a not-for-profit corporation there. There are certain essential things that have to be done every year because we are incorporated there, that we don't necessarily have bylaws that cover those responsibilities for a not-for-profit corporation. We've also created, from going through the history of the cryptic rite and a lot of ancient documents, we've come up with landmarks of cryptic masonry. And we feel that those should be included as cryptic landmarks and maxims within the bylaws, particularly with regard to us setting up any kind of charter for international locations, so that there's an clear understanding of the responsibility of any of our grand councils that are chartered around the world. They don't have the same interaction with the United States grand councils that we have with each other. So we take these things for granted as existing, and understandings between, well, this is the way the Royal Arch operates, this is what the council does, and this is what the commandery does. Well, these traditions are not well set forth and established around the world. And so as we got into this international forum, there was a lot of misinformation or miseducation that was given to our companions throughout the world. And this led to problems in the role of the York Rite. And by creating these things and adding these to our constitution and bylaws, we will be able to ensure that these things are taken care of in due course in the future. Does anyone have any questions about that?
Just so we don't forget, Jahaziel, you had something?
Yes, Grandmaster. Just thinking about the translation and languages barriers, we have been working together with Spanish speakers, with Marcos Estrander, and we have found that we don't have enough material in Spanish. So we are trying to translate some information, but I know I'm going to regret this. We are offering our services to translate some of this material because now we have the ritual, the newest edition. We have finished the translation, and we have a manual for cryptic masons that's from 2010, but we don't know if it is actual. And we have found that we don't have history topics or education topics, and well, If some of us speaks English, he can check on Mackey's manual or something like that. But we think that we need education improvement, and in order to get to that point, we are offering our services to translate these situations because we think we need cryptic culture. We have a situation at Latin America that we are always thinking like in the Scottish Rite structure, and it's pretty different to work the York Rite here. So we need to be quite informed to let the brothers know how we can do these works and how the proceedings and how to perform the floor work. So, well, that's the topic that my companions have asked me right now. So we are offering our services, probably mine, and well, I'll be in contact with Stephen. So we think education is needed here,
Yeah,
and that's it.
absolutely. Steve, you had a comment?
Yeah, actually, I would like to point out to everybody on this meeting that companions Hasael, Alan, and Jorge, I'm gonna get your name right some year, George. Were all instrumental in doing the translations. And to mix the two topics, the Italian tomorrow night is not prepared. And yesterday we had the triennial convocation, which a lot of the team members worked on, and they chose to take the recommended structure, but they chose to use their own translators for that, and that was fine. You know, we're here to serve. We're not here to tell. But Hasael has been instrumental. Alan, Jorge, all have been on the triennial assembly, doing a fantastic job running YouTube back channels and doing translation materials for the ritual. And not to draw from that, but we are working towards that, Hasael. We've got the website, as you know, but we need many companions to know that the website automatically translates all of the articles that are not in PDF. And we try to, and Will Highsmith does an outstanding job of making sure that as much as possible is translated up there. But things like the Constitution and bylaws aren't going to hit PDF, which, by the way, Hasael translated into Spanish, Jorge translated into Portuguese. We're working on these things, and these companions on this call today are active. And absolutely, my recommendation is that Hasael, you made a one mention. The General Grand Master has assigned the task of rewriting the Cryptic Masons manual to bring some things in, to update some things, to do the formatting, etc. As soon as that is available, we will make that available to you. These are all things that are working in the background. We don't talk about them much because they're not done. And that's one of the things, you know, he'll put up to everybody else communication, transparency, and innovation. And behind the scenes, he's saying under promise and over deliver to everybody on the team, which is kind of not disagreed upon. So Hasael, as for Cryptic Masons manual, as soon as I've got one, you'll have it. And as for the histories and other things, I'm going to turn it back over to the General Grand Master because he also has a plan for that.
For which one?
The written histories, the coming soon, maybe 3-book series.
Hey, you want me to take from there, Monty?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Because George has a question as well.
Right. With regard to the history of the cryptic rite, written in 1931 or issued in 1931, we're going to do a reprint of that, but we're going to create a volume 3. AJ Johnson of Nebraska and some others are going to be helping pull that together, and it's going to include some actual history on what occurred with the General Grand Council after 1931, but also a lot of histories of the individual grand councils that have been developed since 1931. So a lot of the international grand councils will be, their history will come into play in this. The idea would be to offer this both as where you can get a reprint of the 2-volume set. If that's all you want, you'll be able to get a 3-volume set or just the 3rd volume. And we'll be taking pre-publication orders on that once we've got the bulk of it written.
George, you had something?
To me, Monty?
Yes, you had your hand raised.
Okay. Yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you, Monty, sir. It was about the education and something, and also the history of the copyright. If it was possible, I think I have spoken with you when we were here in Portugal and also with Bill. And if it's possible to have kind of a digital editions of the books, because it's very difficult to order to Europe the books from the United States. So we have lots of expenses to order that from the States. And if it was possible to, I don't know, make some kind of digital editions that you can now pay it and download it, and I don't know, it's just a thought.
No, we're going to be looking at that because we're aware of that, and trying to come up with different ways that it can be available throughout the world. So we're going to definitely look at that.
Thank you, Bill. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Okay, well, we're coming up on the top of the hour, and I know there's some other meetings scheduled right after this one. So
it's midnight here in Portugal.
Yes, thank you for being here. I miss you guys.
I miss you too, Monty.
So I'm anxious for travel to start opening up, and I need to get over there to see everybody again, and actually get to attend the meeting since right as the pandemic was shutting everything down. I was actually in Greece and Portugal, and both their meetings after I was already there got canceled. So I ended up spending a lot of time, and George took me around to a lot of wonderful places. I got a lot of great history from Portugal.
Lots of museums and with nobody inside, just for us.
And salted cod.
Yeah, also that.
It was really good. But anyway, I again want to thank you all for putting up with us tonight and your attention, and special thanks to Alan for his great presentation. And with that, I wish you all the happiest of Thanksgivings, and may the Lord bless you all and your family and keep you safe over this holiday week.
Thank you, sir.
With that, Steve, why don't you give us a closing prayer and send us home?
Great architect of the universe, we thank you for this wonderful afternoon session of getting together all around the world of crypt companions. And we look forward once again to the day when we can meet face to face, which is the best thing for the craft. We ask all this in your name. Amen.
So motive be. And thank you. I actually meant that to go to the other Steve, but I don't think he minds not being tossed under the bus.
Okay.
Gotta use the general grand chaplains when you can.
There you go. Okay, guys. Take care.
Wherever they are.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys. Really enjoyed it. Safe travels to everyone that'll be traveling.
You too, Tom. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Tom.
Bye-bye.
Bye, General Master. Bye, companions.
Alan, I think you were fine. And, you know, The only thing that I would recommend, and I'll do that here in the near future, but if we can have a couple people that are kind of padding and then have a keynote, or a one person who's padding and then we can have a keynote or something like that, that'll make it, oh, you know what?